Today we're going to do the reenactment of the Battle of Blue Savannah, and when I speak of a couple of the places in Marion County that may not be familiar to you, I want to tell you where they are. Port's Ferry, which was one of FrancisMarion's early camps and redoubts, was on the east side of the river. Take yourself back in time to the year 1780. The Revolutionary War had been going on for about 4 years, and things weren't going real well for the Patriots.
The story of FrancisMarion becoming a partisan leader and a hero is really, I think, one of the great stories in the American Revolution and probably one of the great stories in American history. And to get a sense of how that story played out, you got to remember that Marion was involved in the independence movement from its earliest days. He was commissioned in the 2nd South Carolina Regiment early in the war. He was an officer. He served at the Battle of Fort Moultrie, served at the Battle of Savannah, and was very much known as a formal soldier, professional soldier. And it wasn't until the fall of Charleston in the late spring, early summer of 1780 that Marion found himself a professional soldier without an army.
And so General Marion made his way down the Santee River and then the Black River and to a place called Witherspoon's Ferry on Lynch's River at Johnsonville, and met up with the Britain's Neck Regiment of Militia and the Williamsburg Militia there, and then crossed over to Port's Ferry and made camp there. And one of his first excursions from that camp was over to a place called Nelson's Ferry, just a few days after the Battle of Camden, where he rescued about 150 or 60 Maryland Continental prisoners that were being taken to Charleston. And he came back to Port's Ferry, and a couple of days later, he heard that Tories were gathering along the Little Pee River up near Blue Savannah. And the Tory leaders in this area were Micajah Gainey, who lived in the Wauhee area, just southeast of town here, and also Jesse Barfield, who lived up in the Bear Swamp area off of Ashpole Swamp. So General Marion heard that the Tories were gathering and decided to advance on them. Now, he only had about 53 men, and there were about 200 Tories.
Wallace, welcome to the Grove and the FrancisMarion room at the Grove, and it's a delight to have you here today. Of course, you've been here before, and it's good to have you back because we share a common interest in a very important figure in our past here, General FrancisMarion, and you are one of the most avid students of FrancisMarion and try to make your students at Jonathan School, where you teach history, you try to make avid students of them, of FrancisMarion as well.
Yes, he's an iconic figure to myself, and when I look at his background, he is a descendant of French Huguenots. And in studying South Carolina's history, the French Huguenots first settled in South Carolina in the year 1680. And if you fast forward time to the 18th century, 1780, you will see FrancisMarion, that a descendant of French Huguenots, taking front stage in history. He became a great leader in the fight against the British in this area. And he had an uncanny ability to gather troops together to help fight a common enemy. And there's a saying success breeds success. He was able to utilize local people and get them to give him the necessary information in order to be that evasive figure he became in what we know today as the legendary Swamp Fox.
Now, many people don't realize how local the people really were, and the complexion of Marion's men reflected the community of that time, a genuine reflection of that community. And we know that there were just common, ordinary laborers in his troops, and there were people of all kinds of descent and backgrounds. You mentioned the Huguenots,
Yes.
and of the French extraction, and then we have the Scots and the Native Americans and the Africans, all represented in the ranks of Marion's militia.
Yes, he had quite a bit of followers. Marion also gathered some folks from this local area, what we know today as Britain's Neck, a family by the name of Perkins. There was a Joshua Perkins and a Jacob Perkins, brothers. And this information comes to me from getting research from the National Archives when they petitioned the government for pensions. And their names appear on these rosters. And you have Joshua Perkins, the older Joshua, and he had a son named Joshua Perkins. He also had his son named George, one named Isaac, and another son named Louis.
Now, the Perkins brothers were African Americans. They were people of color. Of course, the Native Americans, the Indians, and the Africans were classified people of color. We suspect that we have also Native Americans in the ranks of Marion. There's already listed in the Britain's Neck Regiment of Militia, which is a local militia. So the Britain's Neck Regiment of Militia, commanded by Hugh Giles, and we know that, of course, this town that we're in, the town of Marion, was not always called Gilesboro. It was, Marion, it was called Gilesboro after Hugh Giles, and later became Marion. And so in that regiment there list a young man named, his first name is Brave Boy, and we just sort of suspect that Brave Boy might have been Native American. And then there are the Scots, many of the Presbyterians who came into the area in Marion's ranks. And you know, the Presbyterians and the Huguenots had some common ancestry theologically. They were both Calvinistic extractions of Christian faiths, and they also both had their stomachs full of monarchy. When they left the old world to come to the new world, they were fleeing persecution of monarchs, the Huguenots in France and the Scots in the British Isles. And so they had in their genes, you might say, in their makeup, an aversion to the crown. So they were likely candidates to join Marion in the fight for liberty. Just before the Battle of Camden in August 1780, Marion appeared with some troops he'd gathered, and they were clad so inappropriately, Gates thought, for campaigning with him, that he sent them back home. So Marion was not involved in that battle, which is very good because Gates got his pants beat off him. But so Marion came back and then intercepted a convoy on the river, ferrying prisoners, the British ferrying Continental soldiers from that battle, and Marion intercepted that convoy coming down the river in the low country here, and released them, and most of them were Maryland troops. And so Marion got into action that way. And then the first battle he commanded as a militia commander was right here in Marion County, the Battle of Blue Savannah. So the resurgence of FrancisMarion is gaining momentum all along what's now been designated as the FrancisMarion Trail in South Carolina. And of course, here in Marion, we are a designated stop on that trail. And we're trying to do our part to magnify his presence in the American Revolution and the great legacy we have from FrancisMarion. And that's happening in other parts of the state as well, and in Clarendon County and Williamsburg County. They're doing some significant things to bring forth the memory of Francis Marion.
Fire! Prime and load!
Between that moment, August of 1780, and the summer of 1781, Marion and the Williamsburg militia kept the Tories on the east side of the PD River at bay, kept the British supply lines toward the central part of the state disrupted, and kept the British from overrunning South Carolina. They really held the line that prevented the British from completely taking over the state. I think most historians agree that had that not happened, had that not been going on during those months, purely as a result of Marion and his followers, that South Carolina would have fallen to the British. Most historians agree that if South Carolina had fallen to the British, then the Revolutionary War in the South would have been lost, and the Revolutionary War as a whole would have been lost.
Quickly, boys, online, online! Online! Here! Mike, ready! Fire! Prime and load! Prime and load! Quickly, quickly! Prime and load, independent fire!
What Marion and the people in the Williamsburg militia and the Britain's Neck militia and all these other groups that ultimately joined him were doing changed the course of Western history. And the amazing thing about that to me, and the beauty of this story, is that you could have asked someone in 1780, who would be the people who changed the course of this war. No one would have picked Francis Marion, and no one would have picked very few people would have picked Francis Marion. No one would have picked these militias in what's now Marion County, Williamsburg County, Florence County. These were very much ordinary people who were not really interested in the larger political issues of the day. They didn't have a lot of stake in this fight, but they knew tyranny when they saw it, and they did not want the land they lived in to be ruled by the type of government that they were beginning to experience being imposed by the British after the fall of Charleston. So it's a great example to me of ordinary people rising up, taking responsibility and doing extraordinary things, changing the course of human history. And that's something I think people in Marion County, Florence County, Williamsburg County can be very, very proud of, that regular people who were called upon in unusual times are able to do great things, and in the unlikeliest of places and in the unlikeliest of ways are able to change the course of history and change the lives of future generations. And that was done by Marion and his men all over the state of South Carolina, places like Blue Savannah, places like Britain's Neck, places like Black Mingo, Utah Springs. All of these battles were fought primarily by local militiamen who would occasionally have to put down their rifles to go back to put in a crop or nurse a sick relative. They fought when they could, but when they fought hard, and they fought for a man who was able to inspire them and motivate them, unlike Marion the professional soldier probably wouldn't have been able to do as effectively.
As a widow of Benjamin Munnerlyn, a captain of infantry in the brigade under the command of General Francis Marion, my husband was first enrolled as a private volunteer in the regiment commanded by then Colonel, and then afterwards, of course, General Marion, in the spring of 1776. He was appointed captain of infantry in Marion's brigade and served in that capacity until the end of the war. He was stationed some time in Britain's Neck and Snow's Island in the PD. From the former place he marched in the night and attacked a company of Tories assembled on the PD under the command of Tory Captain Barfield. The Tories were, of course, completely routed. He was also in an engagement with the Tories at Black Mingo, and on another occasion he commanded a detachment against a large body of Tories on the Little PD. In a fight which took place in what was called Blue Savannah, he caught one of his soldiers as he was falling from a shot in the breast. I am Ann Batchelor, married to Captain Benjamin Merlin, and I am petitioning that you use this as written evidence of my husband's service and discharge.
All right, boys, we've chased Gainey back up the river. Let's head back to the PD.
Barfield and Gainey's men quickly felt they were routed and headed into the Little PD River Swamp, and Marion's men retreated back to Port's Ferry, and they did not hear any more out of Gainey and Barfield for about another month after that. And General Marion went back to Port's Ferry and crossed the river over into Williamsburg County and encountered Major James Weems, who was burning houses and marching up the Great PD River, and they were greatly outnumbered by British regular soldiers, and so Marion retreated back to White Marsh, and this was a frequent tactic of Marion, of hitting and running. All these folks were expert woodsmen.
During 1780 to 1782, the struggle became so furious and bloody that few families in the area, if any, escaped its wrath. Many families lost several loved ones in the fighting. Women and children had been forced from their homes as farms were burned and livestock was killed by both sides. FrancisMarion felt sure that the British would be defeated, but he understood that the bitter wounds of war would heal quicker if the savage struggle now being waged along the PD could be brought under control. Therefore, when ordered to lead an expedition of troops from South and North Carolina into the Little PD River area to crush the Loyalists, he first offered the Loyalist commander, Major Micah Gainey, a truce. The Loyalists are to return any property stolen from Patriot families, take oaths of allegiance to Patriot cause, and agree to serve in the Patriot militia for a period of not less than 90 days. In return, the Loyalists will be considered American citizens.